Welcome to the second video of 6. In today's video we're going to look at marketing. The main part of marketing will appear in paper 1, however in paper 2 the last question is a synoptic question and could ask about marketing in relation to other elements of your course. We'll go through a knowledge refresher and then there will be a selection of questions at the end when I will give the answers and try and explain the mark scheme. Marketing is really important for any business. If a business doesn't understand the needs of its customers, it's unlikely to sell many products. Within marketing, firms are able to familiarize themselves with what their customers need and tailor the product and the advertisements and the price to meet those customer needs best. The company that is most successful in understanding the needs of its customers is likely to be the one that is most successful overall. As well as identifying new potential customers and new products, marketing is essential for retaining your existing customers. Communication to allow your existing customers to understand the benefits of your product is going to ensure that they become loyal to you. Market research is the systematic gathering, analysing and interpretation of information about a market. But you've got to remember it is not just customers you need to find out about, it's also what your competition is doing. Understanding your customers' needs, how competition are developing products, what the trends are is going to help you as a business make the right decisions about the product and promotions that are in place. Methods of gathering market research are broken down into two broad areas. The first of that is primary research. Sometimes primary research will be called field research, and it's going to be done through questionnaires, surveys, focus groups and observations. Primary research is really useful for getting new information that is specific to the purposes that you need. However, there are disadvantages as well as the advantages of getting the right information. Primary research can be costly, it can take a lot of time, and if you haven't asked the right questions, you aren't going to get the right answers. Secondary research, also known as desk research, is information that's already there and could have been created by a variety of different sources. Businesses may already have some internal data from sales which could be useful to help predict trends. The government produces statistics regularly through the Office of National Statistics, which could be useful to see population growth, etc. And there's a variety of other published resources. Market research companies such as Mintel produce information on whole markets. Your competitors might have information on their own websites, on their annual reports that you could use, and each industry will have a magazine that is targeted to provide information about what's happening in that industry. Now, secondary research isn't always cheaper. Lots of students make the mistake of thinking that because it's already there, it doesn't cost anything. Mintel reports, for example, can cost thousands and thousands of pounds. Another major disadvantage of secondary research is that you could be spending hours trialing through lots of different pages of data and you never actually find the information you want. So when you are picking what market research to do or what market research to comment on in an exam question, you need to think about what is the purpose of the research that's being done. There are some key words that you need to understand in relation to market research. The first one is qualitative. This is information that is in depth. You are using small groups of people and you are asking detailed questions to get an in-depth perspective of what they feel about the product or the advert. These tend to take place in personal interviews and in focus groups, and you really do need a skilled marketing professional to be able to get the relevant information and ask the right questions without leading the respondent down a path that they aren't actually meaning to say. Quantitative research, on the other hand, is number-based. It tends to come from closed questionnaires with yes/no answers or selection from a number from 1 to 10, etc. And you can get lots of information to produce graphs. This is really useful because information presented in a graphical form can help a business understand data very quickly, as opposed to having to trawl through lots and lots of long paragraphs and sentences. However, there is no right or wrong method to do market research. It's all going to depend upon what you are wanting to find out. No business is able to speak to all its potential customers or customers. The only survey that is done that covers every person in the country is the census, and that happens once every 10 years. That means businesses have to sample. You don't need to know much detail about sampling for your exam, apart from the fact that if you ask the wrong people, you are potentially going to get biased information. And if you are getting biased information, that's not going to help you with the overall purpose of market research, which is to try and reduce risk by producing a product and a promotional package that attracts the customers you are after. On the last slide, I talked briefly at the very end about attracting the customers you are after. What we mean by that is, what segment are you trying to attract? And that is 2.3 in your specification. Now, markets can be divided into subgroups based upon demographic reasons, geographic reasons, or behavioural reasons. Why do businesses like to segment? It's all very well to say everybody is going to buy my product, but that makes advertising and designing a product a little bit harder. If you can break it down into smaller groups, you can tailor your product and your promotion specifically to those needs. You might want to tackle more than one segment, and you might need to keep the whole market in mind when you are designing products. But having a segment as a core focus is going to help a business develop its products and strategies correctly. There is no right or wrong way of segmenting your market. Demographic segmentation is possibly the most common form, where businesses will pick an age or a gender on how to promote their product. You have to be aware, though, that if you focus promotion, which is too specific and too alienating, that you could put off other potential customers. How would you, for example, segment iron? Both male and females use irons. Different age ranges use irons. So focusing specifically, for example, on females over the age of 18 could potentially put off a lot of customers. So there are negatives that come along with segmentation, as well as the positives that help you to narrow in your target market. Businesses need to make sure that they are constantly reviewing who their product is aimed at. Is the segment that they've previously focused on still a valid segment? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Society is changing rapidly, and businesses need to keep up to date with those changes and need to tailor their products and their promotional activities accordingly. The marketing mix is a tool that combines product, price, promotion, and place, and mixes them together to come up with a unique combination to get that product to the customer. When you are writing your answers to essay questions, please talk about the marketing mix as opposed to the 4 Ps. Remember, the 4Ps are elements of the marketing mix. The 4Ps is not the phrase to use. Product clearly reflects what the business is selling. Now, that doesn't have to be a physical product. It could be digital product or a service. Price is how much they wish to charge for that product or service. And there are different strategies that a business can choose to directly get that product to the customer, such as competition pricing, where they look at see what their competitors are charging and offer a similar level. There's cost plus pricing, where they identify how much it costs to make the product and add on a profit margin. There's penetration pricing if they wish to get a large market share quite quickly, or if they have a high-end luxury product without much competition, they could try skimming, where they are charging a very high price to start with, and then once they believe they have sold all the products to the customers that will pay that higher price, they could think about lowering the price down to a more accessible level to get more customers. Place is where the customer can collect that product from. That could mean going to a store, it could mean having it delivered to you digitally. And promotion is the one that people think about when they think about marketing, and that can be through advertising, sales promotion, public relations, and more importantly these days, social media. Please remember though that marketing is not just about promotion, and when you get a question on marketing and the marketing mix, there might be clues in the question as to which element of the 4Ps they wish you to focus on. Companies need to make sure that they keep up to date with what their marketing mix is, because the marketplace is constantly developing. Consumers' tastes will change and the competition will come along with new products, which means you will have to respond. Let's have a look at some multiple choice questions. Multiple choice questions are in section A of both papers. Lots of students skip multiple choice questions if they don't know the answer. If you genuinely do not know the answer, have a guess. You will not lose marks if you get it wrong. If you have written a question and then you changed your mind on what the answer is, please make it really clear that you have changed the answer. If there's any ambiguity about what the answer is, you won't get a mark for it. So the first question says, a fast food restaurant is currently charging the price of 60p for its new healthy snack. The fast food restaurant intends to increase the price to £2.25 once the healthy snack has become more popular with customers. The current price is an example of competitor pricing, cost plus pricing, penetration pricing, and price skimming. With all of these questions, it would be a good idea for you to pause the video, have a guess, or hopefully answer the question, and then check your answer afterwards. So the answer to that question was penetration pricing. They're starting off with a really low price, and hopefully that will attract customers. Once they've got customers who are loyal, they will then be able to increase the price, and hopefully those customers will have formed a habit in buying that product and will stick with them. Which of the following is a benefit to a business of advertising on local radio? It can target a specific geographical area, detailed financial information can be included, free samples can be given out, and the product can be seen and demonstrated. In this answer, clearly, if you're on the radio, you can't see the product, so D is out. You can't also give out free samples because you're not speaking to individuals face to face, so C is out. If you're giving a radio advert, putting lots of details, which can be quite complicated, is not a good plan. So by a process of elimination, you can be targeting a specific geographical area. However, to be fair, the clue was in the last two words, local radio. In the Business GCSE, a number of questions have to be based upon maths. The most common types of math questions there are working out averages and working out percentages. This is an average question. Madame Co is a women's clothing manufacturer. To identify trends in the market, the firm carried out a lot of market research. The costs of the market research for Madame Co in the last year is shown in the table below. Madame Co's average quarterly spend on market research is 1.05 million, 1.075 million, 2.15 million, or 4.3 million. The answer to this question is B, 1.075 million. You would add up the 4 quarters in total and divide them by 4 to get that answer. A national retailer intends to trial a new product in some of its stores. Which of the following is not a benefit of trialling the product? It avoids wasting money on an unsuccessful national launch. It helps to identify the target market. It requires a lot of national advertising. It shows whether there is sufficient demand for the product. Now, please be careful on questions like this. They're asking what is not a benefit. Businesses will often trial new products before they go to a national launch. They do this because they can see if the product is likely to be successful on a smaller scale before they commit a lot of money to it. Therefore, not a benefit of trialing the product is it requires a lot of national advertising and promotion. That is answer C. A market research agency needs to constantly improve its digital communications to keep up with competition. In 2017, it spent £250,000 on digital communication. In 2018, it spent £525,000. The agency's percentage increase in spending on digital communications from 2017 to 2018 was approximately equal to A, 48%, B, 52%, C, 110%, or D, 210%. So to calculate the percentage change, you would take the new number minus the old number and divide that by the old number before multiplying by 100. So that would be 525,000 minus 250,000 divided by 250,000 and then multiply that out by 100, which would give you C, 110%. Let's now move on to some Section B case study based questions. Section B will have questions ranging from 1 mark up to 9 marks. Because there's a case study, you need to make sure that you read the question carefully. Is the question talking about the impact on the company, or is it talking about specific stakeholders within a company? If you do not read the question carefully, you could end up getting no marks because you are not focused on what the question is asking you. Let's have a look at the Ford Motor Company case study. Ford Motor Company Limited is a global manufacturer of a range of vehicles including cars, vans, trucks and buses. Ford Motors has been one of Britain's best-selling car brands for over 30 years, with a range of models including the Car, Fiesta, Focus, Mondeo and Galaxy. The company's large range of products include models that differ in size to meet the individual needs of different market segments, including eco-friendly small cars, family cars, sports cars and 7-seater people carriers. Ford Motors carries out a lot of market research when developing new car designs and uses both primary and secondary research. This ensures that new car designs and models meet the needs of potential customers. Each model's sales levels are regularly monitored against the product life cycle. State 2 secondary market research sources which Ford Motors could use. State questions are knowledge mark questions. So that is A01A. If you remember from the previous video, A01B is understanding. With A01A knowledge marks, you only need to identify a source. You don't need to put it into a sentence. As this question includes the word Ford Motors, it's asking you to think specifically about the types of secondary research Ford could use. On the screen in front of you is a screenshot of the OCR mark scheme for this question. As you can see on the right hand side, it's just showing you get a tick for each of those sources you identify. It says on the right hand side, do not allow vague answers such as reports, articles. Do not award questionnaire, survey, forum, customer survey, as those are primary sources. It's asking you to focus on secondary sources. On the left-hand side are some possible answers. However, I'd like you to focus in on the bullet points that say internet and competitor. If you are writing an answer and you write websites as your first source and social media as your second source, you would only get 1 mark for that. So if you see a state style question where you are needing to give 2 items, please ensure they're different. Let's have a look at an explain 2 mark question. This one says, explain the purpose of marketing within Ford Motors. This is an A01 knowledge mark because they're asking you to explain what marketing is all about, and they want you to then get an A02 application mark for linking it specifically to the purpose of marketing for Ford. So again, here's a copy of the mark scheme from OCR's website. On the left-hand side, you've got the answers that you could talk about: increasing sales, selling more, informing customers, raising awareness, attracting customers. All of those things would be a purpose. And then you need to identify an application for Ford. So if we look at the bottom half of the left-hand page, one purpose of marketing at Ford is to tell customers about the availability of a new model of car. Now the application mark, as you can see, comes from it talking about a model of car. It gets the purpose mark for informing customers about the availability of that car. A second example down there, the purpose of marketing within Ford is to increase the number of car sales. Now the application again comes from relating it to cars. The purpose is increasing the sales. The third example you've got, marketing helps Ford Motors increase its sales, does not get an application mark because it's only talking about the fact that sales will go up. Just mentioning the company's name does not mean it is applied. Let's just change Ford Motors names to Tesco's. Marketing helps Tesco's increase its sale. You see what I mean? There is no link to the industry that Ford is in, and the question wants you to answer the purpose of marketing within Ford Motors. Before we move on, I'd just like to direct you to the right hand side of the screen again. sales, sell, make sales is too vague. And it's a function of the sales department rather than the marketing function. It's got to have some relevance to increasing sales, and that is why where it's been awarded a mark on the previous page, you've got increase its sales. So if it was marketing helps Ford Motors sales, that wouldn't have been enough. Marketing helps increase sales, that is enough. Please also note before we move on that if you are not specific enough, you'll get that too vague mark for things such as model. The first exemplar response said new model of car. If that response has just said new models, that would not have got an application mark. Let's look at another 2-mark question. Explain how Ford Motors could use market segmentation when deciding to place an advert for its new car models. So 1 mark for understanding the use of segmentation and 1 mark for linking it to Ford's business. Let's have a look at the mark scheme for this question. Let's just briefly look at the right-hand side. Remember, you need to be specific to get the application mark. Talking about models isn't going to be enough. You need to make sure you are talking about cars at the very least. Over to the left-hand side. So how could they use it? They could use it to target the advertising. Let's look at the exemplars. The company could then advertise the cars, so that's the application mark, in a way that would appeal to its target market. Identified the target market there. It allows Ford Motors to advertise in a way which directs its adverts, so that is directing to a specific target, at a high income sports car owner. So there's the application, the sports car. It allows Ford Motors to target its advertising at different age groups. So it only gets 1 mark there because it's talked about targeting its advertising at different age groups, but it hasn't said what. Again, Ford Motors is not enough. Using the name of the company is not enough for application. Let's move on to an analyze 3-marker. Analyze 1 disadvantage to Ford Motors of manufacturing and selling such a large range of products. There's 1 mark here for AO1B, understanding. How is a large range a disadvantage? An AO2 mark for application. Again, we should be used to that now, referencing what Ford does. And then AO3 analysis, what is the impact on the business? Now there's a couple of notes to make here. 1, the question could have a marketing, operations or people response. When we come to the people section video, this question will appear again and we'll look at the answer for that. It could have an operations response, but because this is a paper that focuses on business activity, marketing and people, it's not necessarily something you might think of. And also notice that the focus is Ford as a company. It's not talking about the marketing department, it's talking about Ford overall. 1 other point to note for this, lots of students, despite it saying 1 disadvantage, will give you 2. Please try and avoid that. If you find yourself writing the word also, that possibly means you've gone past talking about 1. You won't get any credit for that. They can only give you 1 set of marks. Let's have a look at the mark scheme for this analyze question. We start off on the right hand side again. 1 mark for disadvantages, 1 mark for application and 1 mark for analysis of that disadvantage, and it must be about the business. So what could you write about? You could include increased workload, Now that is likely to be a people or an operations problem. You could talk about bad publicity. That is a marketing one because it focuses on the product. You could talk about control and coordination. That is a people/operations problem. Focus is diluted. That's an operations style answer. And then diseconomies of scale. Now that could be from business activity, or it could be from advertising, because your advertising becomes less focused and less useful in generating sales. If we just focus on the exemplar response in the middle, if one car model, that's your application there, develops a bad reputation, that's your AO1B mark, it may damage the reputation of Ford's other models, leading to a decrease in sales revenue. That's all 3 marks. Let's have a look at a knowledge question, which is a state question. Many businesses, such as Ford Motors, use the product lifecycle to plan the marketing of their product range. State one advantage to a business of using product lifecycle to plan the marketing of its products. State one disadvantage to a business of using the product lifecycle to plan the marketing of its products. So here it is a knowledge mark. 1 mark for an advantage, 1 mark for a disadvantage. This is potentially going to be a short sentence. Please note that this question asks about product. It ends saying the marketing of their product range. It's easy to slip up there because when you think about marketing, you think about product, price, promotion, and place. And when this question was answered nationally, a lot of people started talking about other elements of the marketing mix. It wants you to focus on product. It wants you to show an understanding of what the product life cycle is in relation to product and not price. A brief reminder of product life cycle. So this shows how a product grows from birth with 0 sales, will go through its introduction phase. As sales rise, it will then start to mature as sales tail off, and then eventually it will start to decline. Let's have a look at the mark scheme for this. So for the advantages, you could be focusing on when it needs to change the spending on its product. So example, to see when most marketing is needed. For the disadvantages, you could talk about ignoring other factors or past performance not being useful for the future. So for example, it does not take into account external factors. Finally, let's have a look at a 7-mark question. Evaluate whether or not Ford Motors should continue to use the product life cycle when planning the marketing of its products. Here, there are no knowledge or understanding marks. That is because a 7-mark question will always follow a 2-mark question. This is called scaffolding. And OCR asks you to demonstrate your knowledge of this topic area in the 2-mark question before you move on to the 7-mark, when you are expected to show application, analysis, and evaluation. Basically, you are doing a 9-mark question but split into 2 sections. And you can think of it as the exam board gently preparing you to tackle a 9-mark question later on in the paper. Let's have a look at the mark scheme for this evaluate question. Before we start, I'd just like to focus in on the evaluate part. There are 3 marks for evaluation. It's about whether Ford should or should not continue to use the product life cycle. You get 1 mark for making a decision, yes or no. They should continue. They should not continue. Even if you write nothing else, you will have got one evaluation mark for that. The second evaluation mark comes from the reason why. And the third evaluation mark comes from making sure you are putting it in context of, in this case, Ford selling cars. So application, by now that should be quite clear. You need to embed the application in what the company does. In this case, it is selling different types of vehicles. Your analysis positively could come from it enables them to decide when to target or change marketing. The negatives could be focused on the fact that it might use internal sales data to predict what the product lifecycle would be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the new car is going to follow the same pattern as the old one. And we've already discussed evaluation. So let's run through this exemplar response. When a car model is first launched and it is at the introduction stage of a product lifecycle, the model is unknown and Ford Motors will need to advertise the car significantly to make people aware of it. So you get the application mark for talking about a car, advertising a car. This will help Ford Motors increase its sales revenue. So that is the impact. The advertising will help Ford increase its sales revenue, an analysis mark. However, the product lifecycle only provides an indication of how much Ford should advertise its vehicles. Again, talking about vehicles gives you an application mark. You can't see the bit because of the little red application bit, but it does not provide details on how, where and what should be advertised, so the advertising spend would be wasted. So that is again the impact. If you are misplacing your adverts, you're going to waste the money. Overall, Ford Motors should continue to use the product lifecycle. 1 mark for making a decision. This would allow the business to increase its sales. 2nd mark, of the new vehicles during a product launch. 3rd mark. Before I finish, please note in the last paragraph when they've come to the conclusion, it starts overall. You do not need to add in I believe or I think. You won't lose marks for it, but what you are doing, if you think about the number of times you would write that through the question where evaluate, justify or recommend comes up, you are wasting time. We know it's your recommendation because you are writing the paper. We know it's what you think. Just be succinct with how you answer the question. Thank you very much. Remember, this is video 2 of 6. The others are online and available for you to review as and when you need to.